It's like, dude, how do I take best care of my people? Even if it means like, I think in some places guys feel like, oh, I won't make as much of an override if that's the case. Well, you shouldn't. What up, Solar Pros? Welcome to another episode of The Pursuit. I'm your host, Josh Holland. Today, our guest is the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Chayse Kidd. How you doing, brother?
Not too bad. How are you?
Doing great, man. Thanks for coming on.
Sounds like you've done this a time or two.
Yeah,
Got the intro down.
I mean, it's been pretty rough a couple of times, so we're rolling, dude. I've been pumped for this one. We thought of you kind of when we knew guys were coming in for the draft, and your story, I think, is one that a lot of guys can relate to. So pretty excited to dive into it, especially just coming from pest side into solar. And I learned a lot about you, dude. I didn't know that you were I thought you were in pest for 1 year, but you were active for
3
years.
3 years.
So, well, dude, back up a little bit, like fill in the peeps on who Chayse Kidd is.
Yeah, I mean, solar pro now.
Yeah.
But was started in 2020 was my first summer.
What got you into door to door?
I grew up in Idaho Falls, so when you grow up around Idaho, Utah,
You come from the same territory.
It's almost like you can't not get into it.
Yeah. Aptive and Radix territory up there. Huh?
Yeah. So I had a ton of buddies that I grew up with that sold Aptive. Got into it, went out. My first summer was the COVID year, so it was a little crazy.
Wow.
But still ended up doing really well, and decided to
straight out of high
step
school.
into it. One summer after.
Okay.
So my first year I was 19.
Okay.
Or 19, turning 20 at the end of the year.
What made you choose Aptive?
Just a lot of my close buddies were
Right.
over there. I had a really good buddy. His name's Danny. He went out and he crushed it, and I was actually his first recruit. Came back, like him and I stayed in touch throughout the summer, and pretty much signed as soon as I got back. Started training, spent a lot of time on it. Definitely gave it the time that it deserved, and it ended up paying off. And
Sweet.
at first, the sales life wasn't the plan, but after you go out for a summer and you do well, it kind of just becomes the new plan.
Dude,
So,
how'd that first summer go?
went really well. Didn't get as much time to work as a normal summer. COVID pushed it back a month. We lost some time because they tried to shuffle us around when other markets started to open because they overloaded Texas. So
It was a crazy year.
And then I guided in Alaska that year, so I didn't work at all in August. So I had basically like May 15th till the end of July. It's about 2.5 months.
Okay.
So ended up doing really well, though. I hit the team leader benchmark that they had at the time. Was one of the top rookies in that office. I ended up making a little over 40, about 44
Dude,
that first year,
solid,
which was great.
Man. Yeah, I mean, I feel like guys that like can hit that 30 to 40K and above, like those guys always come back.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at kind of the pest industry as a whole, I mean, guys that are doing over that as a rookie, I mean, they're the top, like, probably a couple percent, 2 or 3% of rookies for sure. But yeah, it was good. I mean, I love all those guys over there. I learned a ton from them. I bought my first property after that first summer as well. I got into a fourplex right after that summer.
Got a lot to do with the culture there, right?
Yeah, culture's big over there for sure. You had Garrett Myers.
Yeah.
You had Chandler Smith.
Oh, those boys, yeah.
The OG real estate guru over there. So it was awesome working with those guys, and I'm still super close with a lot of the guys that are up over there. And then going on to that second year, I decided to step into kind of managing a team, because when you get into it, you're like, oh, you see your buddies that are making like 30, 40 grand, and then you go out your first summer, and then those same buddies made over 100 grand.
Yeah,
and you're like,
okay.
Jump. Yeah. So now it's kind of like that same thing of like, if they can do it, I can do it kind of thing. So I helped co-manage a team in Houston, on the other side of Houston that year. And we ended up having the third highest producing team in the company. We did about $3.3 million in revenue.
Wow.
3 of the top rookies that broke the rookie record at Aptive, all 3 of those guys were on our team. I still work with a handful of guys from that summer too. So
that revenue's like a couple of days of revenue now, right?
Yeah, do that in a couple of days now. for Pest World,
That was great.
big year. I did really well personal sales, broke 6 figures, made around 130.
So second year broke the 6-figure mark.
Yeah,
That's awesome,
so,
man.
And I feel like that's kind of the first milestone of door to door is once you get past that 6-figure mark.
Yeah, the thermometer, right?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
it. Yeah, no, I same way for me. It took me 2 years to get in and to break that 100K mark, but as soon as you do, it's like it's so true. Like now your expectation of like and what you know you can do is there, so it's you're never gonna drop, or
Right.
at least you shouldn't. But
yeah, once you get there, it's hard to go back.
yeah.
So
Rolling in. So second year you start managing.
yep, managed second year, and then third year broke off and managed my own office. We were in Dallas that summer.
How many guys?
There was about 25, 30 guys in the
Okay.
office. There was like 6 different teams in Dallas, so we kind of spread out like the whole Dallas. That summer was a big learning experience for sure, managing wise and just seeing the impact of like trying to grow really quickly. I think looking back on it, hindsight's always 20/20, but if we would have just kind of consolidated a little bit more, it probably would have been a better summer for everybody. It still ended up being a really good summer. I still did really well personal sales wise. That year my head was kind of back and forth between solar. I
Started seeing the
yeah,
posts.
and I started at the beginning of the summer. I actually sold Oscar Luna. I don't know if you know who that is, but I sold him pest control at the beginning of the summer in May. So Oscar and Tanner Hale tried to get me at the beginning of the summer, and I feel like this is something a lot of guys can relate to. But shifting from one from pest to solar, really into any industry and door to door, switching between can be really stressful, especially when you are a 6-figure level rep. Like you're making really good money, and it can be stressful, like the unknown and the what ifs.
When you're already doing well in one avenue, it's kind of like those what ifs weigh a lot more. You're like, because you're giving something up versus like not coming from a whole lot,
right?
You know, it's like the what if is magnified.
Yeah, but then on the other side, you flip it on the head, and you're like, I mean, that's what this job starts out as.
Yeah,
it is the what if. It is the what if job, and the risks that you kind of take at the beginning. So,
dude, that's awesome.
I didn't end up switching at the beginning of the summer. Sold, finished out the summer, did really well. Ended up making about 160 that summer.
Okay.
And after that summer, went out and blitzed with those guys. They were really good on the follow-ups with me. So went out and blitzed a couple different states, a couple different companies. Kind of figured out what was going to fit me the best.
Knew that you wanted to go to solar though.
At that point, I had made the decision to go to solar. Just after my first blitz, I went out on a 10-day blitz. The first 5 days sucked. I was just off a full year of pest, or full summer of pest, so I was pretty burnt. I was tired. Managed a team.
Managing pest.
And my brain was used to the last 2 years of like, okay, this is when we're home. This is like when we're home, we get a couple months off, we get to go hunt, we get to relax, we do the things that we like to do, and then we get in the recruiting season. But that year, that off season, I really just kind of dove into it and gave the solar a chance. So that the first 5 days of that blitz sucked. I think I got like 1 or 2 sets. I think one of them sat.
Where were you guys at?
We were in Dallas.
Okay.
And then the last half of that blitz, the last 5 days, I ended up getting 4 deals closed. I ended up making about $10,000 off those as a setter.
Okay.
And at that point in my brain, I was like, okay, if I can make $10,000 and not have to wait until next year to get paid, if I can do that my first week in solar, like I can probably grow this to be more than what I was doing before.
Interesting.
So at that point, that was when the decision was kind of made on it to make the switch, and ended up working out really well. The beginning of solar was a little bit of a crazy time. After blitzing a few different companies in a few different states, we ended up going with Lumio, which was a great company at the time. And then as soon as I packed up my whole family, got a year lease out in Dallas, everything kind of switched and changed. But we ended up pivoting to the pros.
Let's go.
Ended up pivoting to the pros, and Josh Slider and Cam flew out, and I met with them over the course of a couple days, trying to understand how everything worked and the model, and if this was going to be a better decision for my guys, and it was and one of those things. Our housing that I had for those guys at the time were ending, so kind of everything was like a perfect storm. We were like, "Okay, we'll go up and try it." They're like, gave us the option, "Hey, you can stay in Dallas or you can go to another state. We can support you in multiple different states." So we ended up going and trying Illinois. We went up there, and once you go to Illinois, man, it's tough to go back. Yeah. It's tough to go back.
Dude, especially that year.
Yeah. Oh, absolute hidden gem that year for sure. So we went up and never went back. I went back, packed up my house. I just paid a year lease for just letting the house sit, and that's
Gonzo.
That's how confident we were in the
That's so
move.
Cool. Dude, I want to dig into that a little bit because there's just so much to unpack there with. Yeah. Man, like takes a lot of courage, takes a lot of confidence. It takes you have people that depend on you, and reps and family members and things like that influence a decision like that. And there's layers to it because, if we go back to Pest, like arguably you were in one of the best culture environments in door-to-door, let alone, inactive, but let alone door-to-door with that region that you were in.
Yeah.
A lot of successful people, a lot of people that are like proving the path. And Pest, it's not like Pest doesn't work. Like Pest, guys do well in Pest.
Yeah.
We all know that. And those guys grind, man. Like the work ethic and, we always talk about if you could get that Pest work ethic of like, here, we're going to knock 9 to 9.
Yeah.
Put that into a solar guy. It's like, oh my gosh. But like for some reason they just can't do it. It's like you become a different human. But maybe talk through like, I'm curious, like what were the biggest things from the Pest to solar switch? You mentioned one, like not waiting to get paid, but what were some other things like going through your mind at that time?
I feel like for anybody that's managed before and had success managing, I feel like everybody that is a successful manager kind of switches into the mindset of where the decisions you start to make start to become very unselfish. They're not for you. There's, like you said, family, reps. There's a lot of other things that go into it before you even get to yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that the culture at the team I was at Aptiv kind of like engraved into me. Like some of those dudes are just genuine, really good dudes, and really care about you. And that's something that I think we try to emulate really well within our offices. But it was definitely a stressful transition for sure, especially when you have a ton of guys that are kind of depending on like the situation you put them in.
You got to get it right.
Yeah, you got to get it right.
For the pressure to like this, it's got to be almost overwhelming evidence to be like, okay, I'm gonna switch not only like away from all of these guys that I know are doing well, but like to a completely different product.
Right.
What were some of the pros and cons that you were weighing?
Well, with Pest, there was a lot of things I didn't have control of, which was something that kind of swayed the decision of like, you don't control the technician on those 4 other visits they have to go out and do if they're going to show up and do a good job. And I feel like you kind of see it within just that the industry together. The rookie rep has a lot of conviction when they're selling because they don't understand the service yet. They haven't seen it. They just know what they've been pitching.
Yeah.
And as sales reps, we are going to pitch rainbows and unicorns.
Oh, yeah, dude.
And the first service most of the time is really good. But those follow-up services and just some of the switches, there's some guys that have really good retention, but like on average, company retention varies like 20 to 30%. And really those top guys that are doing like the golden door type level, they're in the 40s and 50% of having retention. So there was just certain aspects that you don't have control of as a rep that affects your pay, and then having to wait to see the rest of the money that you're owed and hoping that you get what you kind of were expecting.
For those that maybe don't know how Pest works, like how is the pay broken up?
So, I mean, they've changed it a lot even since I've left.
They kind of do a rev share. I've seen a couple of them, like true percentage.
Right.
Or,
What a lot of them have done now, there's really like two different ways that I've seen now after kind of recruiting against them. Like there's a lot of guys that switched from pest this year and like kind of know how it was, and you kind of learn it. You know the industry when you're in it. But a lot of them are switching to kind of the same up front, but they'll start paying percentages of your back end starting in like July, and then you won't get it paid everything you're owed until like March or April of the next year. There's a reason for it. They're smart.
Yeah.
You got the golden handcuffs on.
Yeah.
Over there. It makes it tough to leave.
Yeah.
Because there's money that could get pulled from you super easy. And then the other way is I've seen them to where they'll get their upfront, and then their back ends will start getting paid out in November, and they'll get like bi-weekly checks until it's paid out, and again until around April.
Is that how it was when you were there?
No, when I was there, it was my first summer was $50 up front, and then your first back end came in November, and the second one came in December, and then my second year.
So you're starting to sell in May.
Uh-huh.
You're getting $50.
April, May.
You're getting $50 an account up front. Mm-hmm. That gets you through, and then you end the summer August. You know, maybe some guys extend, not super common, and then you're waiting until November to get your first back end.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Which is, if I remember correctly, is 80% of what you're owed minus what you've already been paid, factoring in a 25 or 30% cancellation.
Okay. So
they kind of estimate the cancellation in it.
Okay.
And then the December is everything else you're owed, and then you get tacked on with any deductions they had on there, whether it was unpaid housing or you didn't hit certain benchmarks of like multi-years or ACH, and then it just kind of gets dwindled down. It was always definitely less than what I expected, for sure.
Okay.
It's tough. I mean, it just comes with the game. It's just you're estimating stuff. You don't know what it's going to be until it hits. And then it just kind of got pushed farther and farther back each year. They went from like first one was in November, then the second one was in like February, I think my last year. So it's just the way the structure kind of.
So balancing, okay, we're in solar, it's, you know, even with an install time and depending on how the pay is broken up, it's still faster.
Right.
So you're kind of weighing those two things.
And in some markets it's faster, some it's slower. Like in Texas, we were getting like 10-day installs sometimes.
Yeah.
And you're paid the following Friday when glass hits the roof. Other states, like 30-day installs, 30, 45-day installs. But what I've found is retention on reps have been a lot better for us.
In solar.
I don't know if maybe it has a little bit of do with both culture and then just pay in general. Guys see more money. Rookies, in my opinion, see more money in solar faster. Especially with the pros. Most companies do some sort of upfront, but at the pros they get $1,000 upfront. And most rookies in pest, even me my first year, like you live pretty close to paycheck. Like
just to get by.
Yeah, like $50 to $100 upfront a sell. You're pretty close, and you get paid every 2 weeks. It's nothing crazy. Whereas like last week I had a rookie that just got a $11,000 check.
Yeah,
like crazy. And it's even though we're waiting on installs, we're getting paid as soon as glass hits the roof on it.
Yeah.
So all in all, I think it was a good switch overall. I'm glad I took the risk to do it, even in the craziness. I mean, one thing that, I mean, on the flip side, solar's more volatile. You got to be able to change. You got to be on top of your game. Like you got to know your stuff.
Solar's a roller, like, I mean, everyone calls it the solar coaster, but it really it shifts, it changes. Like you have to adapt.
Yeah, and I think it comes down to after have seen it. I mean, the company you're with matters as well, because as a rep, there's only so much you can do on certain things. Like you can try to educate yourself as much as you can on kind of what's going on, but if the company's not ahead of it, that's when you kind of run into issues, and that's where we kind of ran into issues with Lumio. They just weren't quite ahead of that curve, and that curve caught up to it and made it to where it was.
So let's jump into that. Like, so weighing pros and cons. Okay, you're like going in on solar, go on this blitz, and then now you're like in the solar verse.
Yeah.
Basically, it's just like, holy cow, there's so many solar companies every direction you look. And then you were being influenced by, you know, some big names.
Yeah.
Right off the bat. Like, dude, walk us through that. Like, what were you looking for? How did you know what to look for? And ultimately, it landed you here, which we're super grateful to have you. But like, how did you deconstruct that?
Yeah. For me, it ended up just turning into something that I had to go and see it. Everybody can talk the talk, but being able to actually go out and see it, how things function, it ended up turning in that off season. I was working a lot still. And I knew I needed to. Like, if I was going to make the switch, I needed to know these things before I started recruiting a team to solar.
Yeah, take the info to your people.
Right. You can't teach something you don't know.
Yeah.
So I ended up spending a lot of time, and I definitely invested myself into it, which is the same thing I had to do in PES. I mean, this job just requires you to invest yourself into it.
Yeah.
It's not a get-rich-quick scheme by no means. Like,
yeah.
it takes work.
No one's getting rich quick here without doing a ton of work.
No. So just kind of doing the due diligence after, like, going on a few blitzes, like install times, ops wise, pay, all that stuff was at the time better at where we were at in Texas, and all was kind of good. And then it came time, we had a big group of guys coming out. Everyone, it was in middle of May, when everyone was getting out of school, and we had about like 25 guys showing up, and they were struggling to like budget in housing. I'm like, what do you mean you're struggling to budget housing? Like, what's going on?
Wow.
And at the same time, at like a VP and regional level, there were guys like also trying to plan pivots, and they could see shift coming. And
from your leadership then.
Yeah.
So those guys are
right.
Yeah.
So it was kind of just an inevitable thing to happen. I mean, even Oscar ended up pivoting to something different. He was started Deca, it was his baby.
Yeah.
And then turned it into Lumio. So,
yeah. What all were what companies did you look at when you were comparing in solar?
So we looked at Lumio was a big one. We looked at, I guess it's New Sun now, but Rise. I had some buddies from my hometown that sold with Rise. Looked at Radix a little bit, and then Nevo was another one that we looked at. And those were
pros.
And pros. Pros really wasn't on the radar until that stuff with Lumio kind of happened, because at the time pros was baby still.
Dude, yeah, it was barely started.
Yeah, I mean, the first year was the first really big month of knocking was January. And the momentum was just barely starting to pick up. So it was kind of got in contact through one of the reps that was on the team, and really wasn't on the radar very much at all until that. One of the reps put me kind of in contact with them.
Dang. What did you find, like, looking at all of them? I feel like you have a unique perspective, dude, because those are all legit companies. I mean, like, they are all legit. Yeah. Like, there's great leadership in all of them. Guys do well at all of them. That's why they're all still around. I mean, even Lumio's like really rebounded fairly well. Like, what were some of the things that you noticed in all of them?
I mean, comparing them side by side, I feel like Solar Pros solved a big problem within the industry, and that was red lines. If anybody's ever worked at a company that had red lines, you know what a red line shopping is.
Yeah.
Especially when you're working with a company that's a dealer, which Lumio is in-house, but a lot of those other companies were dealers at the time.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, why would I work for a dealer that's going to give me a lower or higher red line when I could go work for a different name on my shirt but still use the exact same installer? It just doesn't add up. And it also makes it to where it can kind of create a unhealthy environment within the office of like guys feeling like they're not being compensated right. And same thing. I feel like PES was the same way. I feel like I don't know if you saw this as well in the industry, but I felt like the average lifespan of a rep was like 2 years. Mm-hmm. Whether they got out of it or if they just switched because they figured out how the game actually was played. And most of the time, I feel like just in door-to-door general, the rookie doesn't understand the game yet. Mm-hmm. And those second and third years, you figure out how it's played. Yeah. And in a way, you can almost feel like hurt in a way, like, oh shit, I kind of got screwed. Like they kind of took advantage of me. Yeah. And in some aspects, it can happen. I don't think it happened to me. But the reality, like in PES, the guys that make the most money are the guys that are having huge margin on rookies. That's where they make most of their money. Yeah. You don't see a lot of guys doing 6 figures or multiple 6 figures if they don't have
Tons of
big team.
rookies.
Whereas with Solar Pros, and this is why I had to meet with Josh and Cam for like 3 days to like kind of wrap my head around it, because it was just so abnormal with how the baselines work and how the relationship with Solar Pros and Freedom worked, and how the pay structure worked, and just really diving into it and like where it made sense. The other thing that you ran into, especially when I was getting into it, it was when interest rates started to go up. Dealer fees went up.
Oh, yeah.
So margins started to shrink. And
on a red line.
Right. And the only people that feel a pinch on the red line are the rep that's selling the deal.
Yep.
Like I'd have deals that maybe they had a steep roof or a travel or an MPU or whatever it was, and I was the only one getting paid less because of it. Or if I had to go fight for a deal and undercut someone on a deal or flip my deal back because it got flipped, which was happening to me because Freedom reps were in Dallas and they flipped like 4 of my deals, and I'd go in and like, dude, I can't touch this. It's sold at my red line.
Yeah.
Like how did somebody come in and sell this and make money if it's at my red line? Because I had a pretty good red line.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't a bad red line for Texas by no means. And it made it to where once I kind of understood how the pros operated, it makes a ton of sense once you kind of know and understand. They talk about it all the time, but just the alignment from top to bottom, from sales rep, customer, installer, ops, financer, everything is aligned. I didn't even know that like you could like companies could cut cost. Like I've never heard of a company lowering a baseline before.
Yeah.
And that our first year at Freedom, I think they were lowering a different baseline every single month.
So
and where everybody else's cost was going up, Freedom
up.
was coming down. But it just made it to where everyone was aligned. So like if there was something on a deal, like if you had to do an MPU or a roof, then makes it to where everybody gets paid accordingly. Everybody's feeling the pain.
You share in the cost.
Yeah,
you share in the wins and you share in the losses.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, dude, it's so interesting that I feel like from somebody who hadn't been in solar very long, like you grasped that concept fairly quickly and saw how that translated to your guys. And I think a lot of people just assume, because like Freedom's always on a rev share, that our rev shares as similar as everyone, like how other people do rev shares, but it's actually a true rev share. A lot of people do rev shares on a red line.
Right.
It's like that the math doesn't add up, but like when you break it down, it's like, look, costs are, solar's changing. We want to sell deals at a more fair price and not have it come at the expense of the person that's doing the hardest part of the job, knock on the door or signing the loan docs.
Right.
And that's the alignment that you're talking about. And it's like, dude, how do I take best care of my people? Even if it means like, I think in some places guys feel like, oh, I won't make as much of an override if that's the case. Well, you shouldn't.
Yeah.
Let's take care of the guy that's doing the hardest part of the job.
Right.
And when you buy into that, those are the guys that are killing it here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And on the flip side too is you're helping the customer out more.
Yeah.
Like I would say our average, Bushy even talked about this. Like Mosaic told us that our contract cost was like $4,000 or $5,000 lower than
I think it's $6,000 or $7,000.
Yeah, a lot, way lower than the next person. But we are still getting paid more.
Yeah.
And the customer is saving more money. And those were something that really was a drawing factor for sure.
That's cool.
And it was also something at the same time, was like, I got to see it to believe it. Like,
so you're like, let's go blitz.
Yeah, let's go blitz. I actually ended up selling 2 deals in Dallas before I left.
Oh, wow.
Everybody else had packed up and left. I had my wife, so I had some things I had to take care of before I just left her. She was pregnant at the time. So I could just gone.
Yeah.
I had to take a couple days. But I went to a couple deals and did the process, went through it.
See it all.
It's kind of like drinking through a fire hose at first.
Oh, yeah.
It's almost overwhelming how you have access to everything.
Mm-hmm.
Once you know it, it's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, having access to everything from start to finish, every single note, every single contact point on a customer. If a customer calls me and has questions on stuff, I can tell them everything right on their project.
Yeah.
But at first it can feel a little daunting, but I feel like most of our closers, once they understand, they love it. It's just makes sense, and it also takes kind of weight off of the manager. I mean, it's one less person you got to call and figure it out. So,
dude, and I mean, you came into pros like came in, kicked down the front door. All of a sudden, everyone's like, "Who is Chayse Kidd? Why he is this on leaderboard, dude?" Because you came in late.
Yeah, we
You came in like what? End of May, like middle of May? End of
I
May?
think I had moved. Yeah, we blitzed like the end of May, and then I had moved up from Texas. Like I think like the last week of May was like my first week selling.
Dude,
in
that's
Illinois.
that for everyone recruiting. I mean, like if you can land a network in June, like you can, like recruiting season doesn't end. Like you could pick up a Chayse Kidd, man, because you guys came in. Dude, tell us how it went, because I know how it went, man. I saw you every day.
Went really well. I think going from a market like Dallas to a market like Illinois, everyone was hungry and excited.
Just going.
It was almost like taking candy from a baby.
Yeah.
It felt like just because it was such a shift of a market, different incentives, learning a new thing. It's just anything new is exciting. That first month, at the same time, we had a lot of guys that were transitioning from self-genning or from setting to self-genning, so gave them a lot more opportunities to go in and sit deals because they were setting so many appointments.
Yeah.
But that first month in June, I ended up closing 48.
Your first month, dude.
Yeah.
That's legit.
Like you kind of said earlier, it was like the struggle is taking that pest guy and the work ethic that comes with it,
Yeah.
and put it into solar, and that's kind of what we did. I think we were just consistent on our schedule. I mean, our correlations were at 11 or 12 depending on our drive time, and we would knock till dark every day with probably a 1 hour break in between for food or whatever it was, and we're just consistent with it. We also came from a market that was hot, and we went to the Midwest, which was like 80 all the time.
Nice,
dude.
dude.
Breath of fresh air. But it was good. We also had stuff to prove. I mean, we had a lot of eyes on us from Pest. Multiple guys switched from different industries into solar, and if you have been a guy that has done that before, you know what it feels like. You got the eyes on it. You got a chip on your shoulder. You got stuff to prove.
Yeah.
You got to make more than you did last year.
You
gotta make more than you did last year.
Dude, that's I mean, because you guys came in. I remember that first month. Everyone's like, "Who's this guy?" The team was doing well. Like, you had good leaders in place, and I think you had like a good combination of one, like experience in door to door, but specifically like summer strategy from Pest, because they do it like they've done it the long. Them and Alarms, dude. It's like they know how to recruit. They know how to run solid correlations. Like it's very planned out.
Yeah.
All of those things, car group drivers, all of that's like organized because you have to, because you're only playing for 3-4 months a year, where solar, depending on where you come from, a lot of guys, most solar is year round. It's like very rare that you see like a true summer program.
Yeah.
So you guys just came in with a lot of a good combination of all the things that you had taken from, great mentors and things like that, and just hit the ground running inside of, one, a market like Illinois.
Yeah.
2, inside of pros, which was just absolutely exploding. Like, that's timing, man.
Yeah.
Like, and you can't predict that. Like,
Yeah.
that just
it's
happens.
good timing. I mean, like you said too. I mean, the backing we had from guys like AJ and Grant,
Oh yeah,
Cam and Chris. I mean,
great leaders.
It was like unmatched. Like whatever we needed, they were there, and it made it to where we kind of had something to prove to them too. Like they're doing all this stuff for us, helping us out, and yeah, man, it ended up being a really good year. Kind of propelled us into this year and opening other offices and
yeah. I mean, so let's talk. So you guys had your one office, finished the summer, super solid. I mean, had great leadership with AJ and Grant out there in the field. Those guys do it. They're some of the very best in the industry at doing that. And then you go into your off season. You're starting to recruit. Like, what was that momentum like going into the off season with? Just switched over to pros. This is all this going on. This is what we just did. What was that like?
Yeah, I mean, talk about momentum, man.
Yeah.
It's you had all the eyes on you and you did it and you smashed it out of the park. The guys that worked with us before in the past, I mean, had made more than they'd ever made before. I had made way more than I ever did before. last year if you count my real estate portfolio, I broke 400.
That's amazing.
Without the portfolio, I was like 372 with solar.
Nice.
My W-2s my 1099s from solar added up to 372.
Let's go,
so
dude.
It was big, man. I mean, the momentum was huge. It was, that's one thing that we have as well is, me and my partner Jacob. I feel like we have it more dialed than anybody as far as like the digital side of recruiting.
For sure. Yeah.
So it just opens up a bigger pool for us. A couple of the top setters right now in the company, they all came from ads, and we have like 4 of them on the teams. So
just a couple post up some cars, some dogs, some
real estate,
some real estate land in Idaho, and
Yeah.
it's like I did this in door to door. Boom, they start rolling in.
Yeah, and it's still working for sure. It was cool to be able to help funnel guys to other reps as well, because there's only so much that Jacob and I can do as one person. So being able to funnel guys and teach them how to run those recruiting calls and the training calls, and kind of grow the leadership is fun. I mean, it's I feel like it's something everybody tries to do, and for us, I mean, at least for me in Pest, it was a lot of rebuilding. I feel like it's like that from at least what I saw for most groups, it's a lot of rebuilding every single year.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like for our first year in solar, we had 28 guys and almost all of them came back, which is like unheard of.
Well, I mean, why wouldn't you come back?
Yeah.
You got to give them a reason to come back. I feel like guys miss that. It's like, oh, I can get what I can out of you this year. That's not the mentality here. It's, do we want to grow empires?
Yeah.
You know, that like the competition here, it's like it's at the rep level.
Yeah.
But it's like empire building level, dude. You're like,
Yeah.
dude, how do we scale?
Yeah.
It's fun.
Yeah. Yeah, it's little more than doubled. Not
Going into this year.
Yeah, going into this year. Open another office in Montana, which that Jacob's over there running that one with all of his guys, crushing it. Him and I are going back and forth right now on. I think we're tied right now. I think him and I have the same amount of sales right now.
So what is it? It's May 22nd. It's because first month in, and I think you guys are both at like 30.
I think 33
deals on the month.
Yeah, 33 or 34.
Both of you guys.
Yeah.
See, that's what's crazy. He's like, leading from the front, like first month in, just coming out juiced.
Yeah.
That's legit.
And I mean, just a lot of our guys are just barely getting here. Like the first, I mean, it's crazy that we weren't even we were just barely starting to sell last year, and right now we have almost 400 deals closed.
That's incredible.
And we started this time last year.
Yeah, you just barely started. Yeah. I mean, on pace to. I mean, you've doubled in rep count, but I mean, in deals, you feel like you're on pace to more than double.
I think so. I think the amount of closers that we have. The crazy thing is it's me and Jacob, but then we have our other closers that are all right there.
Yeah.
Like in the 20s and pretty close to 30. Like it's crazy. I mean, it's cool to see everything that you kind of work for building with all of your guys, and everything just carry over right into the summer as far as culture and all of that good stuff. I think one thing that we learned a ton over the last couple of years is cutting the fat early helped us a lot.
Really?
We didn't have first month of April, not a ton of guys out, and we if guys were dragging or if it was in their best interest, if they aren't getting sets and they aren't closing it, it probably isn't the best fit for them.
Do you have a standard in place, or just kind of rep by rep?
There's a standard for me. I know that this job is a learning curve. Everybody works at different paces. I've have a few reps that when they first got into it struggled for a month, and now they're some of our best reps.
Yeah.
But our standard really comes down to the amount of work that's being put in. If you're not having the dispositions and you're not working and you're not hitting the hours that you need to be working, then you're just not giving it the time it deserves, which means it probably isn't going to end up working out. Whereas Pest, you're wanting that guy to just get a few deals to hopefully cover his rent. Whereas now I can go get 2 or 3 more guys pretty dang easy and fill spots where we need to fill spots. And the volume, the revs higher, like you're less worried about one rep and hopefully making an override on that one rep. It's protect the culture is, I think, one of the biggest things that we've learned over the last 4 years.
Dude, that's incredible, man. I mean, and you think of what does that look like going into next year?
Yeah.
You know, like what that could be.
We have a couple plans for sure. Hoping to probably have another close to a double. We're looking at opening two more offices in 2 other states. So not going to disclose them yet, but we have some stuff in the works. We gotta keep them gems gotta keep them gems close.
You already told me one. And I'm like, that sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Dude, what I think is so cool is I think a lot of guys, and I talk to a lot of guys like in pros, outside of pros. Most of the guys outside of pros, when I have the conversation, they feel like solar is just not the same, that it's dying. And then I look inward, I'm like, and not that everyone's just like absolutely crushing in pros. It doesn't work that way. It's like the guys that are set up for it, that have the best leadership, that are the most aligned, that have, you know, the little things right. All of those guys, every single one of them is succeeding at an extremely high level here. And it's the wave, it's the current that we're rowing in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's so cool to see like what that could look like next year. I mean, I've seen a lot of guys in the industry have like one really good year and then their office gets cut in half, or like things aren't the same anymore. Like, and they're stuck in one state where, dude, you guys opened up Montana.
Yeah.
You know, massive reason why Montana's open, and thanks to freedom and like that they're in a good enough spot that like that's even an option.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, they took a gamble on us. I mean, Jacob Keim is the one that got that one going for sure.
Our boy, dude.
He's from there. He's relentless.
Hey.
Hey.
Hey, that's a good word right there.
He's relentless. He was relentless on that one, and
let's go.
Man, he's showing it was worth it for sure. He's killing it over there.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
I mean, dude, like to kind of like wrap up, what is there anything you feel like comes to mind when we ask, like, as an aspiring person who wants to grow here in pros or just indoor door in general, like what are some, I mean, you've experienced it, you've been through the curve, like you've led a lot of teams and made transitions and made difficult decisions. Like what are some key things you feel like guys maybe miss on? Like they're focusing on the wrong stuff, or like what comes to mind?
I would say a couple different things. I mean, leading from the front's a big one.
Yeah.
It's something that when you look at the highest producing teams, like there's always the leaders leading up front. Like last year, AJ, Grant were some of the top closers last year, and they were running multiple teams.
Mm-hmm.
It has an impact on everybody else. And when you're talking the talk and then you're going to go walk the walk, is a really, really big one. I would say having systems as well. I would say just going around to when we were figuring out what was going to be the best fit was not, I mean, just in solar in general, it doesn't have as much, teams don't have as much stuff figured out and dialed and consistent, where I think in this industry, consistency and repetition and knowing what to expect and being able to control the things you can control in such a crazy job is really important.
Oh, dude.
It has a big impact mentally on all the reps, and it makes it to where everybody's heard the motto, a high tide raises all ships, but it holds true. I mean, it's really, really important. So I'd say those are the really the two big things, is just protecting your culture, having your systems dialed. And like you said too, I mean, it happens. Like sometimes years happen, like where you lose some guys and you rebuild. Like AJ Grant, you even went through a year where you had to rebuild. Years. Yeah, I mean, it happens a lot. And it's all about how you respond to it. AJ and Grant, you both went through a big rebuild at pretty similar times. Now you guys have two of the biggest regions in the company.
Yeah.
Not even, I mean, in the industry, pretty dang close.
Dude, yeah, it's incredible to see. Like, I think the two highest qualities someone can have in this job, like the qualities I look for the most and like people I want to build around, humility, because I've been the guy that hasn't been humble before, and I've seen how that goes. Me and Cam Gray talk about it all the time. I should have like just leaned into Cam Gray a long time ago.
Right.
And then two is resilience, or being relentless.
Yeah.
But yeah, like just the ability to get through the storms, dude, because they're gonna come. And I always felt like I could get through the storms, but you know, the humble factor has always been, you know, where I feel like I lost my footing a little bit until the last couple of years. But man, like those are the guys that you see, like that are willing to learn and like and they can get through the hard times. Those guys always make it. They always do.
Yep.
So, Chayse Kidd, bro, you're an absolute stud. Seriously, you guys, vitality. Go follow this kid on Instagram. Like just doing big things. Really big into real estate. Hunter guy. He's our outdoorsman here. Thanks for coming on, bro. Like seriously, guys, reach out to him. You have questions, things like that. He'd be a great mentor guide for anyone that wants to replicate what he's done. I don't see why you wouldn't want to do that. So appreciate you coming on, brother.
Yeah, thanks for having me.